The scorching sun beat down upon Violet Eastwood's tear-streaked face as the crude wooden auction platform creaked beneath her feet. Her wrists, bound with coarse rope, had rubbed raw, but that pain was nothing compared to the humiliation burning through her as the auctioneer shouted to the crowd of leering men. "Next up, gentlemen. A fine specimen. Young, strong, and pretty enough to warm any man's bed." The man's voice boomed across the dusty square of Silver Creek, Montana Territory, 1878. "Bidding starts at $50. Violet struggled against her bonds, her honey-brown hair falling across her face. 3 weeks ago, she'd been traveling west with her elderly uncle, her only living relative, when their stagecoach was attacked. The bandits killed her uncle and took her captive. Now these men, these monsters, were trying to sell her as if she were no more than a mare or a cow. 55. Called a voice from the crowd. 60, shouted another. Violet's stomach turned. She'd heard of such auctions happening in remote western towns where law was scarce and human life held cheap, but never imagined she'd be standing on such a platform herself. $75. A portly man with yellowed teeth leered at her. 80, countered a rail-thin miner whose eyes never left her chest. The auctioneer grinned, revealing tobacco-stained teeth. "We've got 80. Do I hear 90? The crowd's attention suddenly shifted as the thundering of hooves split the air. Heads turned toward the edge of town, where a lone rider approached at a gallop. The horse, a magnificent chestnut stallion, skidded to a halt at the edge of the crowd, sending dust billowing into the air. The rider dismounted in one fluid motion. Tall and broad-shouldered, he wore a dust-covered black hat pulled low over his eyes, a worn leather vest over a faded blue shirt, and chaps over denim trousers. A revolver hung low on his hip. "What's going on here?" His voice was deep, carrying an edge sharper than the hunting knife strapped to his thigh. The auctioneer cleared his throat. "Just a sale, mister. Nothing that concerns outsiders." The stranger's eyes, blue as a mountain lake, traveled from the auctioneer to Violet, taking in her bound wrists, tear-stained face, and the terror in her eyes. "A sale." The stranger's voice was dangerously quiet as he pushed through the crowd. "Looks to me like you're selling a woman." "She's got no kin, no protection," the auctioneer said defensively. "Found by Harker's boys after an Indian attack. Better she belongs to someone than starves, ain't it?" The stranger's hand moved to rest on his revolver. "She belongs only to herself." Those 5 words, spoken with such certainty, sent a ripple through the crowd. Violet felt something stir within her chest, not hope, not yet, but perhaps its distant cousin. "Listen, stranger," the auctioneer said, nervousness creeping into his voice. "We don't want no trouble. This is how things work out here. Not anymore." The stranger ascended the steps to the platform in 2 long strides. He pulled a knife from his boot and cut Violet's bonds before addressing the crowd. "Any man here still thinking of buying this woman will answer to me." His reputation must have preceded him, because the crowd began to disperse, muttering and casting dark looks over their shoulders. The auctioneer backed away, hands raised placatingly. "What's your name?" the stranger asked Violet, his voice gentler than it had been moments before. "Violet," she whispered, rubbing her chafed wrists. "Violet Eastwood. I'm Dexter Erickson." He removed his hat, revealing dark hair with a slight wave to it. "Do you have somewhere safe to go, Miss Eastwood?" Violet shook her head, fighting back tears. "They killed my uncle. He was taking me to my cousin in Sacramento, but I don't even know if she's expecting me anymore." Dexter's expression softened. "I've got a small ranch about half a day's ride from here. You can stay there until you figure out what to do next." "No strings attached," he added, seeing the wariness in her eyes. "You'll have your own room with a lock on the door." Violet studied him, trying to determine if this offer of help concealed darker intentions. But there was something in his steady gaze that made her incline toward trust. "Why are you helping me, Mr. Erickson?" A shadow passed over his face. "Because 3 years ago my sister was taken in a raid by the time I found her." He stopped, jaw tight. No one should be treated like property, not ever. Violet swallowed hard. "Thank you. Don't thank me yet." He glanced around the nearly empty square. "We should leave before some of those men decide they don't like being denied what they wanted to buy." He helped her onto his horse, then mounted behind her. As they rode out of Silver Creek, Violet was acutely aware of his chest against her back, his arm around her waist to steady her. Despite her fear and exhaustion, she felt the first stirrings of safety she'd experienced since the attack. "Mr. Erickson," she said as the town receded behind them. "Call me Dex," he replied. "Everyone does." "Dex, then. I don't know how I'll ever repay you for this." She felt rather than saw his shrug. "You don't owe me anything, Miss Eastwood. Some things a man does because they need doing, that's all." As they rode across the rolling Montana prairie, the summer breeze cooling her tear-stained cheeks, Violet wondered what fate had in store for her. All she knew was that for the first time in weeks, she wasn't alone. The sun was beginning its descent when they crested a hill, revealing a modest ranch nestled in a verdant valley. A small main house built of sturdy logs stood proudly alongside a barn and corral. A creek wound lazily through the property, bordered by cottonwoods whose leaves shimmered in the breeze. "It's not much," Dex said, "but it's mine. Paid for it with 7 years of driving cattle." "It's beautiful," Violet replied sincerely. After weeks of captivity and fear, the peaceful scene before her looked like paradise. As they approached, a man emerged from the barn, older, with graying hair and a weathered face. "That's Samuel," Dex explained. "He helps me run the place. Used to be a Buffalo soldier before he took a bullet in the leg. Best hand with horses I've ever seen." Samuel's eyebrows rose as they rode into the yard, but he made no comment about Violet's presence, simply nodding respectfully. "Any trouble while I was gone?" Dex asked as he dismounted. "Nah, though Jenkins rode by. Says the Blackwater gang hit another homestead up north." Samuel's eyes flicked to Violet. "Madam." "This is Miss Eastwood," Dex said. "She'll be staying with us for a while." Samuel nodded again, taking the reins as Dex helped Violet down from the horse. Her legs, unused to riding, nearly buckled beneath her. "Easy," Dex said, steadying her with a hand on her elbow. "Been a rough day for you." Violet managed a wan smile. "A rough few weeks, actually." Inside, the house was simple but neat. A main room served as both kitchen and living area, with a stone fireplace at one end. A narrow hallway led to what Violet presumed were bedrooms. "You can take my room," Dex said, gesturing down the hall. "I'll bunk with Samuel in the lean-to out back." "I couldn't possibly, please," he interrupted gently. "After what you've been through, you need proper rest in a proper bed." Too exhausted to argue, Violet nodded. "Thank you." "There's a washroom through there," he pointed to a door off the kitchen. "We've got running water from a windmill pump. It'll be cold, but it's clean." The thought of washing away the grime and fear of the past weeks nearly brought tears to Violet's eyes. "That sounds wonderful. I'll find you some clean clothes." "They'll be too big, but anything would be better than this," she said, looking down at her filthy, torn dress. While Dex rummaged through a trunk, Violet took stock of her surroundings. The home was masculine but not austere. Bookshelves lined one wall, surprising in a cowboy's home, and a guitar rested in the corner. On the mantel sat a few photographs. A younger Dex in uniform, another of him with a woman who shared his eyes, his sister, perhaps. "Here," he said, returning with a stack of clothing. These are the smallest things I could find. There's soap and towels in the washroom." Violet accepted the clothes gratefully. "I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't come along when you did." Something dark flickered in Dex's eyes. "I know exactly what would have happened. That's why I couldn't ride past." The cold water was shocking but exhilarating as Violet scrubbed away weeks of grime. She washed her hair 3 times, watching the water run from murky to clear. When she finally emerged, dressed in Dex's too large flannel shirt and trousers rolled up at the ankles and cinched tight at the waist, she felt more human than she had in a long time. She found Dex in the kitchen, frying bacon and potatoes. The smell made her stomach growl embarrassingly loud. "When did you last eat a proper meal?" he asked without turning around. "I can't remember," she admitted, sitting at the table. He nodded grimly and added more potatoes to the pan. "Samuel's seeing to the horses. He'll eat later." They ate in comfortable silence, Violet trying not to wolf down the simple but delicious food. When her plate was clean, Dex wordlessly served her seconds without being asked. "Tell me what happened," he said finally, "if you're up to it." Violet set down her fork, appetite suddenly diminished despite her hunger. "My parents died of influenza last winter. My uncle, my father's brother, offered to take me to live with my cousin in California. We were on the stagecoach when," she swallowed hard, "there were 5 of them. They shot the driver first, then my uncle when he tried to fight back." Dex's jaw tightened, but he remained silent, letting her continue at her own pace. "They took me to their camp. I thought they would," she couldn't say the words. "But their leader, a man called Barrett, said I was worth more undamaged. They kept me tied up, moved me from place to place. Then yesterday they brought me to Silver Creek." "Barrett," Dex repeated, something dangerous in his tone. "Tall man, scar across his chin." Violet nodded, surprised. "You know him, know of him. He runs with the Blackwater gang." Dex's expression darkened. "They've been terrorizing the territory for months, rustling robbery worse." "He's the one who arranged the auction," Violet said, her voice catching. Dex reached across the table, his calloused hand covering hers briefly. "He won't come near you again. I promise you that." The certainty in his voice comforted her, though she wondered how one man, even one as capable as Dex seemed, could make such a promise against a gang of outlaws. As if reading her thoughts, he added, "I was a Union cavalry officer, Miss Eastwood. I've dealt with worse men than Barrett." "Please call me Violet," she said. "After today, I think we're beyond formalities." He smiled for the first time, a small, crooked thing that transformed his stern face. Violet, then. That night, lying in Dex's bed, surrounded by the unfamiliar scent of leather and pine that clung to his sheets, Violet stared at the ceiling. For the first time in weeks, she wasn't bound or guarded. She could get up, walk around, even leave if she wanted to. The freedom was almost overwhelming after such prolonged captivity. She thought of Dex, his quiet strength, his unflinching defense of her, a woman he didn't know. In a world that had recently shown her its darkest corners, he was an unexpected light. She fell asleep wondering what twist of fate had brought him to that auction square at exactly the right moment. Morning brought the unfamiliar sound of birdsong instead of the rough voices of her captors. Violet woke slowly, disoriented, before remembering where she was and what had happened. Her body ached from the unaccustomed horseback riding, but it was a clean pain, different from the constant discomfort of her captivity. She found clothes folded neatly outside her door, a simple calico dress and undergarments that looked to be approximately her size. A note in rough handwriting explained, "Borrowed from Mrs. Jenkins at the neighboring ranch. She's happy to help." Dressed in clothes that actually fit, Violet felt another piece of her dignity restored. She braided her damp hair and ventured into the main room where the smell of coffee and biscuits greeted her. Samuel nodded to her from the stove. "Morning, miss. The boss rode out at dawn to check the north pasture. Said to tell you to make yourself at home." "Thank you, Samuel." She hesitated. "Is there anything I can do to help around here? I'm not much of a ranch hand, but I can cook and clean." Samuel regarded her thoughtfully. "Boss said you're a guest, not hired help." "I know, but I'd like to contribute something. I've never been one for sitting idle." A hint of approval crossed Samuel's weathered face. "Reckon you could help with breakfast then. Biscuits need watching while I feed the chickens." By the time Dex returned mid-morning, Violet had not only helped with breakfast but had swept the main room and was hanging freshly washed sheets on the line outside. He dismounted, watching her with an unreadable expression. "You don't need to do that," he said, approaching. Violet pinned the last corner of a sheet. "I know, I wanted to." "How are you feeling today?" "Better," she said honestly. "Having proper clothes helps." His eyes swept over her, taking in the simple dress. "Mrs. Jenkins has a kind heart. Her husband brought those over at first light. I should thank her in person. Their place is about 2 miles east, maybe in a few days when you're stronger." He cleared his throat. "I've been thinking about your situation. The stage to Sacramento passes through Boulder Creek every Tuesday. That's the closest town, about 15 miles from here." Violet's heart sank unexpectedly. Of course he was already planning her departure. What had she expected? "That's very kind," she managed. "But I am not sure I have enough money for the fare. The bandits took everything my uncle and I had." Dex waved away her concern. "I can cover the fare." "I couldn't possibly accept. Consider it a loan," he said firmly. "You can repay me when you're settled with your cousin." Violet nodded, though the thought of leaving for Sacramento, a place she'd never been, to stay with a cousin she barely knew suddenly seemed far less appealing than it had weeks ago. "Of course, there's no rush," Dex added, perhaps noticing her expression. "The stage runs every week. You're welcome to stay until you're ready to travel." Relief washed over her. "Thank you. I don't think I could face another journey just yet." His expression softened. "Take all the time you need." Over the next few days, Violet gradually found her footing at the ranch. Despite Dex's insistence that she was a guest, she fell into a routine of helping with meals and household tasks. It gave her purpose and distracted her from the lingering nightmares of her captivity. Dex was often out working the ranch, but in the evenings, they would sit by the fire. Sometimes he would read aloud from one of his many books. Emerson and Thoreau seemed to be favorites, or play simple melodies on his guitar. Occasionally, Samuel would join them, sharing stories from his days with the Buffalo Soldiers that made Violet alternately laugh and marvel at his bravery. 4 days after her arrival, Dex announced at breakfast that he needed to ride into Boulder Creek for supplies. "Would you like to come along?" he asked Violet. "Might do you good to get out, see the town. It's small, but they've got a proper store and a tea shop the local women speak highly of." Violet hesitated. The thought of being around strangers again made her anxious, but she couldn't hide at the ranch forever. "I'd like that," she said finally, "if you're sure it's safe." "It's safe," he assured her. "Boulder Creek's a decent town. Sheriff Hollister doesn't tolerate trouble, and the Blackwater gang gives it a wide berth." They set out after breakfast, Violet riding a gentle mare named Daisy that Samuel had saddled for her. The day was perfect clear skies, a gentle breeze and wildflowers dotting the prairie. As they rode, Dex pointed out landmarks and shared stories about the area. "That ridge there," he said, gesturing to a distant line of hills. "The Cheyenne believe it's shaped like a sleeping buffalo. Legend says when it wakes and stands, the world will change forever." "You believe that?" Violet asked. He considered her question seriously. I believe every culture has its own way of understanding the mysteries of life. Who am I to say which is right? His answer surprised her. Most men of her acquaintance would have dismissed such beliefs outright. That's a rather philosophical view for a cowboy. He smiled, that same crooked smile that transformed his face. I wasn't always a cowboy. Before the war, I studied at Dartmouth for 2 years. My father had hopes I'd become a lawyer. What happened? Fort Sumter happened. I enlisted, like thousands of other young fools. His expression turned distant. By the time it was over, I couldn't stomach going back to lecture halls and libraries. Needed open sky above me. They rode in companionable silence for a while, cresting a hill that revealed Boulder Creek in the distance, a collection of wooden buildings nestled against the backdrop of mountains. "It's lovely," Violet said, surprised by how civilized it looked after Silver Creek's rough appearance. "Founded by Quakers," Dex explained. "They've since moved on, but they established a certain tone that's persisted." Boulder Creek proved to be every bit as pleasant as Dex had described. The main street was wide and relatively clean, lined with proper businesses: a general store, a bank, a hotel, and yes, a tea shop with lace curtains in the windows. People nodded respectfully to Dex as they passed, curious glances at Violet quickly masked by politeness. At the general store, Dex introduced her simply as Miss Eastwood, staying at my ranch for a spell, offering no further explanation. The proprietor, a jovial man named Milton, took this in stride. "Pleasure to meet you, Miss Eastwood. Any friend of Dex's is welcome in Boulder Creek." While Dex arranged for supplies to be delivered to the ranch, Milton's wife Sarah took Violet under her wing, helping her select fabric for a new dress and other necessities. "Been a while since we had a new face in town, especially one so pretty," Sarah said warmly. "You must join our ladies' sewing circle while you're here." The simple kindness nearly brought tears to Violet's eyes. After her ordeal, such normal, everyday interaction felt like a precious gift. Later, at the tea shop, Violet sipped Earl Grey from a delicate china cup while Dex drank coffee from a sturdy mug. Through the window, she could see their horses hitched outside, Dex's magnificent stallion dwarfing her gentle mare. "Thank you for bringing me today," she said. "I didn't realize how much I needed this." "You seem different," he observed. "More human," she suggested with a small smile. "Alive," he corrected. "Your eyes have more light in them." The simple observation, delivered in his straightforward manner, touched her deeply. "I'm starting to feel alive again. Thanks to you," he shifted, uncomfortable with her gratitude. "I didn't do much." "You saved me," she said quietly. "Not just from that auction, but from giving up hope." Their eyes met across the table, and something passed between them, a current of understanding, perhaps something more. Dex broke the connection first, clearing his throat. "We should head back before dark." As they rode out of town, Violet felt lighter than she had in months. The weight of her captivity was still there, but it no longer threatened to crush her. They were about halfway back to the ranch when Dex suddenly reined in his horse, his posture alert. "What is it?" Violet asked, immediately tense. "Smoke," he said grimly, pointing to a thin, dark line rising in the distance, coming from the direction of the ranch. Without another word, he urged his horse into a gallop. Violet followed, her heart pounding as they raced across the prairie. As they drew closer, the smoke became more distinct, definitely coming from Dex's property. They crested the final hill to a scene from Violet's nightmares. The barn was ablaze, flames leaping into the darkening sky. The main house appeared intact, but several men on horseback were circling it. Dex pulled up sharply, drawing his rifle from its scabbard. "Stay here," he ordered. If things go badly, ride back to Boulder Creek for the sheriff." "What about Samuel?" Violet asked, scanning desperately for the older man. "That's what I intend to find out." Dex's face was set in hard lines. "These are Barrett's men. I'd stake my life on it." Fear clutched at Violet's throat. "They've come for me. They won't have you." The certainty in his voice bolstered her courage. "Remember trouble, you ride for Hollister." Before she could respond, he was galloping down the hill toward the ranch, rifle ready. Violet watched, heart in her throat, as he approached the group of riders. She couldn't make out words at this distance, but she could see the confrontation unfolding. Dex stopping a safe distance from the men, his rifle pointed at them. One rider separated from the group, moving toward Dex. Even at this distance, Violet recognized the man's posture. Barrett himself. The man who had ordered her kidnapping, who had arranged her sale as if she were livestock. The two men appeared to exchange words. Barrett gestured expansively, seeming relaxed despite the rifle aimed at him. Then, with horrifying suddenness, he drew his pistol. Dex's rifle cracked first. Barrett jerked in the saddle but didn't fall. The other riders immediately drew their weapons, but Dex was already spurring his horse toward the cover of the burning barn. Gunfire erupted below. Violet watched in terror as Dex dismounted behind the water trough, returning fire from cover. The outlaws spread out, trying to flank him. She should ride for help as he'd instructed. That would be the sensible thing. But Sheriff Hollister was 15 miles away, and by the time she returned with aid, Dex could be dead. Making her decision, Violet urged Daisy forward, keeping to the edge of the property where trees provided some cover. If she could circle around to the house unseen, she might be able to help somehow. As she approached, she spotted Samuel. The former soldier was on the ground behind the smokehouse, clutching his arm, which appeared to be bleeding. He was conscious but clearly injured. Keeping low, Violet made her way to him. "Miss Eastwood," he gasped when he saw her. "You shouldn't be here. What happened?" "Barrett and his boys showed up an hour ago. Said they were looking for you." Samuel winced as he shifted position. "When I wouldn't tell them where you'd gone, they got unfriendly." Gunfire continued to exchange between Dex and the outlaws. Violet counted at least 4 men besides Barrett. "We need to help him," she said, peering around the edge of the smokehouse. "He's outnumbered." "Gun cabinet," Samuel grunted. "In the house. Side window to the kitchen is unlocked." Violet's heart raced. She'd never fired a gun in her life, but she couldn't just hide while Dex fought for both their lives. "Stay hidden," she told Samuel, then dashed toward the house, keeping low. The side window was indeed unlocked. Violet climbed through, finding herself in the kitchen. The gun cabinet stood against the far wall in the main room. She crept toward it, praying none of Barrett's men had entered the house. The cabinet was locked, but the key hung on a nail nearby. Dex clearly wasn't expecting thieves out here. Inside were 2 shotguns and a revolver, along with boxes of ammunition. Violet took the revolver, loading it as she'd seen her father do years ago. A floorboard creaked behind her. Violet whirled, the gun raised instinctively. Barrett stood in the doorway to the hall, blood staining his left shoulder where Dex's bullet had struck him. His face, handsome in a cruel way, registered surprise at seeing her. "Well now," he drawled, his own pistol aimed at her chest. "If it isn't my runaway merchandise. Saved me the trouble of tracking you down." Violet's hands shook, but she kept the revolver pointed at him. "I am not merchandise," he smirked. "Feisty, I like that, makes the breaking more satisfying." He stepped closer. "Put the gun down, girl. You don't know how to use it, and I'd hate to damage that pretty face." "Stay back," Violet warned, her voice steadier than she felt. "Or what? You'll shoot me," he laughed. "You don't have the stomach for it." He was right, the thought of killing anyone, even Barrett, made her sick. But as he took another step toward her, Violet remembered the humiliation of standing on that auction platform, the terror of captivity, the cruel hands that had bound her. She adjusted her aim and fired. The bullet struck Barrett's right leg. He howled in pain, his own shot going wild as he staggered. Outside, the gunfire had intensified. Violet didn't know if Dex was still alive, but she had to assume he was. The alternative was unthinkable. Barrett recovered his balance, rage contorting his features. "You'll pay for that," he snarled, raising his gun again. Violet ducked behind the heavy oak dining table as he fired, the bullet splintering the wood near her head. She scrambled toward the kitchen, seeking better cover. The back door burst open. Dex stood there, blood streaking his face from a cut above his eye, his rifle trained on Barrett. "Drop it," he commanded, "or the next bullet goes through your heart." Barrett hesitated, calculation in his eyes. "2 against 1, he said. "Not bad odds." "Those were your odds outside, too," Dex replied coldly. "Your men are down. It's over." Barrett's eyes widened slightly, then narrowed in fury. For a moment, Violet thought he would choose death over surrender. Then, with a curse, he dropped his pistol. "Violet," Dex said, not taking his eyes off Barrett, "there's rope in the kitchen drawer. Bring it here." Her legs shaky with receding adrenaline, Violet fetched the rope and helped Dex bind Barrett securely to a chair. "Are you hurt?" Dex asked her once Barrett was secured. "No," she managed. "Samuel is, though. He's behind the smokehouse. I saw him. Flesh wound, he'll be all right." Dex's eyes held hers. "You should have ridden for town." "I couldn't leave you," she said simply. Something flickered in his expression, surprise, perhaps admiration. "Thank you," he said softly. "Though next time I'd appreciate if you'd follow instructions." "Next time?" She raised an eyebrow. "You planning on getting into more gunfights?" The tension broke as he laughed, a genuine sound that transformed his blood-streaked face. "No, madam, not if I can help it." They turned their attention to Barrett, who glared at them with undisguised hatred. "She shot me," he spat. "The little watch your mouth," Dex cut him off sharply, "or I'll gag you for the ride to Boulder Creek." "The sheriff won't hold me," Barrett sneered. "I've got friends in high places." "We'll see about that," Dex said grimly. "Kidnapping, attempted murder, arson seems like enough to keep you occupied for a while." With Barrett secured, they tended to Samuel's wound, a bullet graze that looked worse than it was, and assessed the damage to the ranch. The barn was a total loss, but miraculously, the horses had escaped unharmed, now grazing nervously in the far pasture. Barrett's men, as Dex had said, were all down, 2 dead, 2 wounded and tied up outside. By the time they loaded the prisoners into the wagon for the journey to Boulder Creek, night had fallen. Samuel insisted he was well enough to drive the wagon while Dex and Violet rode alongside. "What will happen now?" Violet asked as they set out, the glow of the smoldering barn still visible behind them. "Hollister will lock them up. There'll be a trial." Dex's face was grim in the moonlight. Barrett wasn't wrong about having friends, but kidnapping and selling women crosses a line that even corrupt officials can't ignore. And after, she couldn't quite bring herself to ask the real question. "What about me?" Dex seemed to understand anyway. "That's up to you, Violet. The stage to Sacramento still runs every Tuesday." He paused. "Or you could stay. Boulder Creek could use a schoolteacher if that interests you." Hope fluttered in her chest. "I taught children back home in Pennsylvania." "I know," he said softly. "Samuel found letters in your uncle's belongings after the attack. They mentioned your teaching." The idea of building a new life here where she'd found both terror and kindness was suddenly appealing, a life where Dex might be more than just her rescuer. "I think I'd like that," she said. To stay, I mean. His smile, barely visible in the darkness, warmed her more than any fire could. Sheriff Hollister proved to be everything Dex had described: fair, incorruptible, and thoroughly intimidating. After hearing their statements, he had Barrett and his surviving men locked in the town's sturdy jail. They'll stand trial next month when the circuit judge comes through, he assured them. Barrett's been a thorn in my side for too long. With your testimonies, he'll hang. They stayed the night at Boulder Creek's small hotel, too exhausted to make the return journey. Violet in a proper room, Dex and the bandaged Samuel in another. The next morning, after checking that their prisoners remained secure, they rode back to the ranch. The burned-out shell of the barn was a stark reminder of how close they'd come to disaster. "We'll rebuild," Dex said, surveying the damage. "I've been meaning to build a bigger one anyway." Violet asked, not missing his choice of words. He turned to her, suddenly looking less certain than she'd ever seen him. "I meant, that is, if you're staying in the area, you're welcome here, for as long as you want." Samuel, dismounting nearby, rolled his eyes. "Lord give me strength," he muttered. "Boss, just tell the lady you're sweet on her and be done with it." Dex's face flushed beneath his tan. "Samuel," he warned, but Violet found herself smiling. "Is that true, Dex? Are you sweet on me?" He rubbed the back of his neck, looking everywhere but at her. "It's not. I wouldn't presume." "That is, after what you've been through, Dex," she interrupted gently. "Look at me." When he finally met her eyes, the vulnerability there touched her deeply. "I'd like to stay," she said. "Not just in Boulder Creek, but here with you, if that's what you're asking." "It is," he said softly. "Though I'm making a mess of it." Samuel cleared his throat loudly. "Think I'll go check on them horses," he announced, leading his mount toward the pasture. "Might be gone a while, hour or two at least." As he limped away, Violet couldn't help but laugh. "Subtle, isn't he?" "About as subtle as a stampede," Dex agreed, his own lips quirking upward. He took a step closer to her. "Violet, I know it's too soon. You've barely had time to catch your breath after everything that's happened, but I want you to know I haven't felt this way about anyone in a very long time." She closed the distance between them, her hand reaching up to touch his cheek. "When I was captive, I thought I'd never feel safe again, never trust again. But then you rode into that square, and you said those words, 'She belongs only to herself,' and something inside me recognized you. Not your face, but your soul." His hand covered hers where it rested against his face. "I've been alone a long time, told myself I preferred it that way. Then I saw you on that platform and everything changed." Slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, he lowered his head. His lips met hers in a kiss so gentle it brought tears to her eyes, not passion, not yet, but a promise. A beginning. When they parted, his eyes searched hers. "Too much," she shook her head. "Just right." Over the weeks that followed, they rebuilt more than just the barn. As summer turned to autumn, the ranch transformed. With help from neighbors and townspeople from Boulder Creek, a new, larger barn rose from the ashes of the old. The house gained a fresh coat of paint and curtains in the windows. A vegetable garden sprang up behind the kitchen, Violet's doing. Violet herself transformed too. The haunted look gradually left her eyes, replaced by quiet confidence. 3 days a week, she rode into town to teach at the small schoolhouse, quickly becoming a beloved figure to the children of Boulder Creek. And each evening, she returned to the ranch, to Dex, to the home they were creating together. Barrett's trial came and went. Despite his boasts about powerful friends, the evidence against him was overwhelming. The judge sentenced him to hang, a fate carried out 2 days later in the Boulder Creek town square. Violet didn't attend the execution. "He's taken enough from me," she told Dex. "I won't give him my attention at the end." Instead, they rode into the mountains that day, picnicking beside a crystal-clear lake where eagles soared overhead. As they sat side by side on a blanket, watching the sun play across the water, Dex took her hand. "I have something to ask you," he said, uncharacteristically nervous. Violet's heart quickened. "Ask then." From his pocket, he withdrew a small ring, a simple gold band set with a single pearl. "It was my mother's," he explained. "My father gave it to her when they had nothing but dreams and each other." "It's beautiful," Violet whispered. "Violet Eastwood, I know it's only been a few months since that day in Silver Creek, but I feel like I've known you my whole life, or at least the part of my life that matters." He took a deep breath. "Will you marry me?" Tears welled in her eyes, but they were tears of joy. "Yes," she said without hesitation. "Yes, I will." The ring slid onto her finger as if it had been made for her. When he kissed her this time, there was no hesitation, no holding back, just the passionate promise of a future together. They were married on the first snow of winter, in Boulder Creek's small church. The entire town turned out for the celebration, along with ranchers from miles around. Samuel stood as Dex's best man, proudly wearing his old Buffalo Soldier dress uniform for the occasion. As Violet walked down the aisle in a dress of ivory silk ordered specially from Denver, she caught Dex's eye. The look on his face, wonder, love, pride, would stay with her forever. "I never believed in fate," he told her later that night as they stood on the porch of their home, watching snowflakes drift lazily from the night sky. "Always thought a man made his own destiny through hard work and determination." "And now?" she asked, leaning into his embrace. "Now I think perhaps there are some things meant to be, some paths that were laid out before we ever took our first steps." He turned her to face him, brushing a snowflake from her cheek. "How else can I explain riding into Silver Creek at exactly that moment? I hadn't been to that town in years." "Providence," Violet suggested. "Or angels. Or simply love," he said, "calling across time and space, bringing us together when we needed each other most." As they stood there in the gentle snowfall, Violet thought of all the twists of fate that had brought her to this moment, some terrible, some beautiful, all necessary. From the tragedy of her parents' deaths to the horror of her captivity, to the miracle of Dex riding into that square just when all hope seemed lost. "She belongs only to herself," she whispered, echoing his words from that first day. "Always," he agreed, kissing her forehead. "Though I hope she might choose to share her life with me." "Not just my life," Violet said, taking his hand and placing it gently on her still flat stomach. "Our future." His eyes widened as he understood her meaning. "Violet," he breathed, "are you certain?" She nodded, joy bubbling up inside her. "The doctor confirmed it yesterday. Come spring, there will be 3 of us." Dex let out a whoop that startled a nearby owl from its perch, sweeping her into his arms and spinning her around, heedless of the falling snow. When he set her down, his eyes shone with unshed tears. "I never thought I'd have this," he confessed. "A family, a love like this." "Nor I," she admitted. "After everything that happened, I thought that part of me was broken forever." He shook his head, cupping her face in his hands. "Nothing about you is broken, Violet Erickson. You're the strongest person I've ever known." As they stood together in the quiet beauty of the winter night, Violet reflected on the journey that had brought her here. From terror to safety, from captivity to freedom, from loneliness to love. The road had been harsh, but it had led her home to this man, this place, this life they were building together. "I love you, Dexter Erickson," she said, the words simple but profound. "And I love you," he replied, sealing the promise with a kiss as the snow continued to fall, blanketing their world in perfect, pristine white. Spring arrived with a rush of new life. The pastures turned emerald green, dotted with wildflowers. Calves frolicked alongside their mothers in the meadows, and in the newly rebuilt barn, a litter of kittens made their home in the hayloft. Violet's body changed with the season, her belly growing round with their child. Dex was endearingly protective, insisting she cut back her teaching to just 2 days a week and hiring a young ranch hand named Billy to take over the heavier household chores. "I'm pregnant, not made of glass," she protested one evening as he insisted on carrying a basket of laundry for her. "Humor me," he replied with a smile that still made her heart skip. "It's my first time at this." Their baby daughter arrived on a perfect June morning, just as the sun crested the eastern mountains. After a night of labor with the town midwife attending, Violet gave birth to a healthy girl with a shock of dark hair and eyes as blue as her father's. "She's perfect," Dex whispered, holding his daughter with a mixture of terror and adoration. "What shall we call her?" Violet, exhausted but radiant, touched the baby's tiny hand. "Hope," she said, "because that's what she is, the hope of our future, born from the love we found against all odds." "Hope Erickson," Dex agreed, his voice thick with emotion. "Welcome to the world, little one." As summer ripened into autumn once more, the ranch flourished alongside their growing family. Dex expanded their herd, while Violet's garden yielded a bountiful harvest. Hope grew stronger each day, her laughter the sweetest sound either of them had ever heard. On the anniversary of the day, they met that fateful auction in Silver Creek. Dex took Violet riding to a spot overlooking the valley, where their ranch nestled like a jewel amid the vast Montana landscape. "A year ago today, I was just a lonesome cowboy with too many regrets," he said as they sat side by side on a fallen log. "Now look at us." Violet leaned her head against his shoulder, watching as the setting sun painted the sky in shades of gold and crimson. "From the darkest day came the brightest future," she mused. "Life is strange that way. Do you ever think about what might have happened if I hadn't ridden into Silver Creek that day?" he asked quietly. She shuddered. "Sometimes, in nightmares." His arm tightened around her. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have asked." "No, it's all right," she assured him. "The nightmares come less often now, and when they do, I wake to find you beside me and Hope sleeping peacefully in her cradle, and I remember that the nightmare is over. This," she gestured to the valley below, to the life they'd built. "This is real." He turned to face her fully, taking both her hands in his. "I made a vow on our wedding day to protect you, to cherish you, to love you all the days of my life. But it started before that, the moment I saw you on that platform. Something in me recognized something in you, and I knew I'd move heaven and earth to keep you safe." Tears pricked at Violet's eyes. "You did more than keep me safe, Dex. You helped me find myself again when I thought that woman was lost forever." As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the land, they rode home together to their daughter, to Samuel and Billy waiting with supper on the table, to the life they continued to build day by day. Later that night, with Hope sleeping peacefully and the ranch quiet under a canopy of stars, Violet stood at the bedroom window, looking out at the land that had become her home. Dex came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist, his chin resting on her shoulder. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "The future," she replied. "Our future. I was thinking we might need to add another room to the house eventually." He turned her in his arms, eyebrows raised. "Are you saying?" She nodded, a smile spreading across her face. "Not yet, but someday soon, I think. Hope should have a brother or sister, don't you agree?" The joy that lit his face was answer enough, even before he swept her into his arms and carried her to their bed. "I love you, Violet Erickson," he whispered against her lips. "More than I ever thought possible." "And I love you," she replied, her heart full to bursting. "My cowboy, my husband, my home." Outside, a shooting star streaked across the Montana sky, a fleeting moment of brilliance that mirrored the miracle of their love. Born in darkness, forged in fire, and destined to shine for all the days of their lives. In the years that followed, the Erickson ranch prospered, as did their family. Hope was joined by a brother, Daniel, 2 years later, and eventually by another sister, Sarah. The house expanded to accommodate their growing family, and the reputation of Erickson cattle spread throughout the territory. Violet continued teaching, eventually opening a proper school on their own land when the children of neighboring ranches grew too numerous to make the daily journey into Boulder Creek. Dex served 2 terms as county sheriff before returning full-time to the ranch, content to let younger men handle law enforcement. Samuel remained with them until his passing at the age of 78, surrounded by the family who had come to love him as their own. They buried him on a hilltop overlooking the ranch, his grave marked by a stone bearing the insignia of the Buffalo Soldiers and the simple epitaph, "A free man who lived with honor." And on summer evenings, when the work was done and the children played in the yard, Dex and Violet would sit on the porch, hand in hand, watching the sun set over the land they loved. "You ever regret it?" he asked her once, on the 20th anniversary of their meeting. "Staying here instead of going to California?" Violet, her beauty only enhanced by the passing years, looked at the home they had built, at their children nearly grown now laughing as they played a game of horseshoes with the ranch hands. "Not for a single moment," she replied, squeezing his hand. "This is where I was meant to be, where we were meant to be." And as the evening star appeared in the deepening blue of the Montana sky, Dex kissed her with the same tenderness as he had on that snowy day when they first pledged their lives to one another, a kiss that spoke of a love that had only grown stronger with each passing year. A love born in the darkest of circumstances, but destined to shine as bright and enduring as the stars themselves. For Violet and Dexter Erickson had discovered what truly mattered in this wild, sometimes cruel world. Not wealth or status or power, but the freedom to choose one's own path, the courage to stand up for what is right, and the blessing of finding, against all odds, the one soul who makes yours complete.